Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Today is Wednesday, June 19, 2019, calling this meeting of the Wayne County Ethics Board into session. We are now in session. Moving on to our first agenda of our first item on our agenda is roll call.
Robert Young.
Here.
Freeman Hendricks is excused. Mona Hamoud.
Here, good morning.
Sue Carnell is excused. Sandra Busario.
Here.
Edward McCall Thomas.
Here.
Karan Pinkins.
Present.
Chairman Yavakorum present.
Thank you for that, sir. All right, moving on to the next item of our agenda this morning, we have the approval, item B, the approval of the minutes of the May 15, 2019 meeting. I believe all members have received a copy of those minutes. At this time, is there any objections or is there a motion to accept the meeting minutes?
So move.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Moving on to the next item on our agenda, item C, unfinished business. Right now we had item number 1, which is the continuation from May 15, 2019, of the hearing of the complaint by County Executive Warren C. Evans against County Treasurer Eric Sabri. I believe Mr. Sabri may be present. I think his attorney is here. Good morning, sir. Sirs, thank you very much for being here again.
Good morning.
We're going to go ahead and sort of pick up where we left off, if you can recall, sir. So we can pick up where we left off. I'm not sure, Dr. Hamoud, were you here at the last meeting?
Yes,
you didn't? No. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and let you proceed where we left off. I'm not sure if you want to do an introduction again or not, but I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor to proceed where we left off.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask my client questions based upon questions that were asked of him. So I'm ready to proceed. I don't see any need to make comments now. I'll reserve my ability to do that later near the conclusion of the proceeding.
Okay.
Mr. Sabri, when we were here on May 15th, there was a request that we provide a document called a receipt or a bidder statement. There was a request made by one of the board members. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
And after that hearing, you provided me with a document that is captioned bidder statement. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I provided those documents to the board. Ms. Busario, did you obtain a copy of that? It was you that had requested it.
Yeah, the,
Bidder statement
for the
Cortez
property
Sanders.
For Cortez Sanders, I did.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sabri, I'm going to hand you the document that we provided to the board. And actually, we gave them 2 documents. One that we had given them before, it's a deed to the property made out to Cortez Sanders, and then the bidder statement. Could you very briefly explain to the board what that document is?
This document is a statement just given out to registered bidders when the properties are purchased, when the actual bidding is completed, and when the actual payment is made. And it sort of speaks for itself in the sense that it has the date, the final bid amount, the amount that was paid. It talks about the sale date here.
What was the
sale date is October 24th, 2017. And the date of the receipt is in the little box on the bottom left-hand side, which states date created, which is 10/25, October 25th, 2017.
And is there a requirement at the treasurer's office that when someone bids on a piece of property, whoever the purchaser is, that they have to pay for the property within a set amount of time?
Yes, there is.
And what is the set amount of time that they have to pay for the property?
It's within 72 hours from the time of the sale that the purchase should be paid for.
And was that done in this particular case regarding the property that was deeded to Cortez Sanders?
Yes, it was.
All right. Thank you. There were also some questions asked of you at the last hearing regarding an April 25th, 2014 email exchange between someone named David Shemansky and Cynthia Yoon. Do you know those 2 individuals?
Yes, I do.
I'm going to hand you a copy of that email exchange. Now, you received a copy of this email exchange between Ms. Yoon and Mr. Szymanski, is that correct?
Yes, I was one of 5 people copied on this email.
All right. And at the time that you received, at the time that you would have received this email, a copy of this email, what was your position within the treasurer's office?
I was a deputy treasurer for land management.
Okay. And was Mr. Szymanski working there?
Yes, Mr. Szymanski was the chief deputy treasurer.
And what about Ms. Yoon? What, if any, role did she play with the county back on this date?
She was an attorney with the tax team in Corporation Counsel for Wayne County.
Now, at the time that this email exchange took place on April 25th of 14, at the time that took place, did you have any input or did you seek to have any input regarding what the auction rules were going to be for 2014, 2015, or any other years?
No, I did not have any input in this at this particular time. No, I did not.
Now, in the email, in Mr. Szymanski's email to Ms. Yoon, he states that the WCTs, and would it be fair for me to assume that means the Wayne County, that's an acronym for the Wayne County Treasurer's Office?
That's correct.
He indicates to her that this is the rule as he knows it, and he refers to it as a rule. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, she wrote back to him, and she gave some comment regarding his email, and you received a copy of this back at the time. What exactly did she tell him regarding her opinion on what the rule should be?
She said, it's written here, I forgot to add that I didn't think employees, families should participate. At the very least, it looks bad.
Now, is there any discussion in this email exchange regarding conflict of interest or a specific legal basis for prohibiting or wanting to prohibit family members of the treasurer from participating in auction?
No.
Now,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Thomas. Can you repeat that question again? I'm sorry, just so I can pick up for the record. I didn't hear that question you just asked him.
I'll try. Is there any discussion in the exchange between Mr. Szymanski and Mrs. Yoon about conflict of interest or any other legal basis for wanting to prohibit the treasurer's family members from participating in an auction?
No.
Mr. Pinkins, did you get it?
I did. Thank you, sir.
Now, after that email exchange, after that April 2014 email exchange, according to your testimony and according to the documents that we've submitted to the board, there was a change made to the auction rule concerning treasurers and treasurers' employees' family members participating in auction, and that change went into effect in 2015 and 2016. Is that correct?
That's correct. The documents that were submitted were not documents that I submitted. These were documents that were on the auction website during the year in which the auctions took place.
Well, I didn't mean to say that you submitted. I said we submitted them to the...
I just wanted to make it clear.
Okay, very good. All right. I want to clarify something. The change that was made in 2015 and 2016, could you state what the change was as succinctly as possible?
The change that was made for 2015-2016 auction took out the prohibition of family members participating in the auction.
Mr. Sabri, did you play any role or take any part in making the decision to adopt that change for 2015 and 2016?
I did not.
Do you even know, as we sit here today, I know we have that email from April of 2014, do we know as we sit here today who it would have been that would have had to have made the decision to change the auction rules for 2015 and 2016 as you described?
The only person with the authority to make that change was the treasurer at the time, and that was Raymond J. Vortovich.
Would Ms. Yoon have had any ability to make that type of change or say, no, I don't want that type of change?
Ms. Ewing's role was to give recommendations,
Right.
not to make the decision.
What about Mr. Szymanski as a high-ranking employee at the Treasurer's Office? Would he have been able to override a decision by Treasurer Witovich that was going to be made for 2015 or 2016?
No.
Now, when we were here last, on May 15th, you testified that something happened with the auction rules in 2017 and 2018. Some changes were made. Remember that?
Excuse me, Mr. Thomas, if you can just hold for 1 second. If I can ask everyone to silence your cell phones, all cell phones, please. Just put your cell phones on silence. This proceeding is being recorded, so it's picking up everything that's, so we want to make sure that the questions and answers are recorded. So I'm just going to ask everyone to please silence your cell phones. Thank you. You can proceed, sir.
Thank you. When we were here last, you testified that there were some changes that were adopted for 2017 and 2018. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
And could you very briefly state for us again, for the record here today, what changes were made for 2017, 2018?
And for the 2017 and 18 auction, the rule was changed. It was changed back to a similar language in 2014 with some addition to it. And the additional language that was added for 2017 said, conducted by the treasurer. At the very end of the rule, it talked about, it said, prohibited from participating in the auction. Then the language in 17, which continues to 18 and is still in place today, says, conducted by the treasurer.
Now, was that requirement or was that added phrase or added provision, was that in place in 2013, 2014, prior to the 2015 change?
No, it was not.
What, if any, significance would the change have that was made in 2017, the added language that you've described that said to be sold at an auction conducted by the treasurer? Explain to the board the significance of that.
Well, the significance of that statement is that if the auction was contracted out to a third party or some entity besides the treasurer's office, then that prohibition would not apply.
Now, I want to go back to the period of time when you became treasurer. I think it was your testimony that you became treasurer in April of 2016. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you have any, do you recall whether there was any discussions between Corp Counsel's office and you or any of your deputies regarding the change that was being made to the 2017, 2018 rules?
I was not involved in the 2017-18 rule change, but there were a number of individuals who review the auction rules every year. Around this time of year, June, July, August, before we post the rules for the auction, they're being reviewed. We had a lot of turnover in the office, in the upper management, so I'm not really certain who was involved in working on that particular year in 17. We had about 4 or 5 people working on it, including Corporation Counsel, who was involved every year with the review of the auction rules before we published them in August on the website.
And just so that we're clear regarding the 2017, 2018 changes, the treasurer and their employees and family members of the treasurer and employees would not be able to purchase property at an auction, but the limitation was that it had to be an auction that was conducted by the treasurer. Am I right or am I wrong?
You're right.
Now, when we were here last, you were asked questions regarding how many purchases, how many property purchases from the auction there were by your wife. And I believe you said in 2008 she purchased 6 lots. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That was prior to the time that you were even employed at the treasurer's office, long prior.
That's correct.
And then you indicated that in 2011 she purchased, she had someone bid for her on 3 properties in the city of Harper Woods. Is that correct?
Yes,
And she-
that's correct.
And she purchased those properties. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I believe it was your testimony that those were the only properties purchased by your wife or her companies during this entire period of time that we've talked about, even right up until today's date. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, I'm excluding from my question the 2017 bid that your son put in for Cortez Sanders, other than that one. I'm not talking about that one. I want to go back to the time, 2011. You were employed at the treasurer's office, and your wife was planning on bidding, I guess, on these 3 Harper Woods properties. What was there about the auction or the auction procedure that was taking place that year that you thought would have enabled her to go forward with that bid?
Well, I had been in the treasurer's office about 6 months, and I knew that the auction was being hosted or being conducted by an outside entity, a third-party contractor, and I interpreted the rule to be that it would not be a conflict of interest, it would not be a violation if she participated. She did not know of the rule. I knew of the rule, and I didn't think it was a violation because it was being conducted by an outside contractor. And I discussed that in my answer previously.
Subsequent to the hearing on May 15th, you and I obtained a sheet that was apparently submitted by the county executive, Mr. Evans, at the time he filed his complaint. And that was a sheet that made reference to standards of conduct, conflict of interest standards that he had apparently alleged at the time he made his complaint that he believed you may have violated. You recall receiving that from me after our last hearing here?
Yes, I do recall.
Now, the sections of the ethics ordinance that Mr. Evans referenced on that page was section 40-4, 1 through 5. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, I'm going to set in front of you a copy of Ethics Ordinance 40-4, sections 1 through 5, which Mr. Evans listed. You see that?
Yes, I do.
I want to go through those and ask you if, in your opinion, any of those are applicable to the situation that we're discussing here today and that we've discussed at past hearings here, okay?
Okay.
The first one, section 1, is a public servant shall not participate in the making of any county decision with respect to any manner in which they or a relative or domestic partner has a substantial financial interest which is distinguishable from that of the general public. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Do you believe that that's applicable to the purchases that your wife made in 2011?
No, I do not.
Let's move to section 2. If a public servant has a conflict of interest in a particular county procurement, they shall not take part directly or indirectly in that procurement and shall immediately notify their superior if applicable. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Now, did your wife or any of her companies procure or attempt to sell any type of services to the county back in 2011 when she purchased those houses?
No.
What is a procurement, as you take it to mean, as treasurer of Wayne County, when you see terminology talking about procurement? What do you take that to mean?
That means that you're actually purchasing goods or services on behalf of the county from outside entity or individual.
All right. I want to move on to section 3, and this is a long section. I'm going to abbreviate it a little. You want to read any portions of it to the board, you can, but this section states essentially that there's a conflict of interest on behalf of a county employee if there is a substantial financial interest in a procurement, and then it talks about somebody, a family member, becoming employed in section B. Section C deals with the county employee or their family member negotiating for employment with any county business. And then the last one is has a substantial financial interest in a business in which one or more of the principal beneficiaries of this county business also has a substantial financial interest, etc. In your opinion, do any of those apply to the purchases of those 3 Harper Woods properties that your wife made back in 2011?
No, they do not.
Now, Section 4 says there is a conflict of interest if a public servant uses confidential information for their personal gain or for the personal gain of a relative or domestic partner or other. Did you ever use any personal information for a personal gain for your family member or yourself back regarding those 3 Harper Woods purchases in 2011?
No, I did not. And I wanted to add something to that answer. The auction process, just so to explain how it works, because a lot of people don't understand how the auctions work. It's a public auction, and we have an online auction. The list of the properties that are sold are published 30 days before the auction. Everyone has the ability to see those properties. The price of the properties is published along with the address and the parcel ID number. So there's no information that is secret or not public regarding the auction. That information is public, is published by state law, has to be published 30 days before we conduct the auction.
Okay. Now, you had an opportunity to review Mr. Evans' complete complaint after I obtained that missing page. Did Mr. Evans in his complaint list any other alleged violation other than Section 40-4, Standards of Conduct 1 through 5?
He did not.
There were questions asked of you at the May hearing regarding what, if any, changes you might like to see made regarding the auction process in Wayne County regarding foreclosed properties. Was it your testimony that you are not planning on making any changes of any type to the rules that we've provided to the board for calendar years 2017 and 2018?
You're talking about 2019 auction?
For 2019. If I didn't clarify that, I think it was your testimony that you said you weren't planning on making any more changes for 2019. Is that
No,
correct?
changes. There'll be no changes for 2019. But the discussions had previous discussions about changes, and there will be continued discussion about changes because we're looking at the most cost-effective way and most efficient way of conducting our auction, and that analysis will continue.
Now, what role, if any, might the concept of having an independent auctioneer conduct the auctions play in that decision-making process?
It's cost effectiveness as well as efficiency. And as we have 4 years of experience with outside contractors doing the auction.
When was that?
That was 2010, 11, 12, and 13. So we've had 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 5 years since then. The Treasurer's Office has conducted the auction, and so we can look back and do analysis, which we're continuing to do, as what is most effective and cost efficient for the county.
Would your decision or any decision that you might make regarding future changes after 2019, would your decision be impacted or affected in any way by a desire to want your family members to be able to purchase property from the auctions?
Absolutely not.
Now, there was some testimony from an individual named Marty Spalding at the last hearing about the auctions that his company conducts for the state of Michigan, and I believe it was over 60-some counties in Michigan. You remember that testimony?
Yes, I do.
When you're talking about cost effectiveness, is it possible that having an independent auction house come in and conduct the auctions would be more economically feasible from a profit perspective than the county doing it on its own?
It's possible.
And is that the perspective that you're looking at that from and considering?
That along with the efficiency and with the user friendliness of the process. All of that is how the public can interact with the auction site, how much it costs us to actually run the auction, the number of employees. It also figures into the cost, how many employees we have, and just the overall effectiveness. We have to look at everything. And one of the main thing is we've been looking at this, and my main focus since I've been the treasurer has been to help reduce foreclosures.
Have you done that?
85% reduction in foreclosures since 2016.
Are you,
So,
are you
telling you-
telling the board that foreclosures have gone down by 85% in Wayne County during the period that you've been treasurer?
Yes, I am. And to keep people in their homes and reducing foreclosures, that has been the main focus since I've been the treasurer. So a lot of the analysis that we have with the cost effectiveness and the efficiency of the auction, the analysis is continuing and the discussions are continuing, but we haven't come to a final decision whether we should continue doing the auction ourselves or contracting it out.
Could I have one moment, please?
Sure.
I have no further questions of Mr. Sabri at this time.
I thank you. So at this point, I'm going to open it up to any board members to ask any questions that they may have, concerns they may have.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Thomas.
Mr. Sabri, is there any relation between yourself and Mr. Cortez Saunders or Ashley Carter Ritter?
What was the second name you just gave?
Ashley Carter Ritter?
No, sir. No relationship at all.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just have a couple quick questions. I believe at the last hearing, Mr. Sabri, you had stated that with respect to the bid that was put in you said your son's name, that your attorney provided a copy for today. That was in 2017. This Adam Sabri, I think at the last hearing you stated that Adam Sabri is a registered bidder, but you stated that that the person, I think it was Cortez Sanders, had actually used his information and bid on this property. Is that correct, sir?
Well, I'd like to just clarify a little bit about that. The fact to say he used his information, it's a little different than what happened. He actually, Cortez Sanders was Adam Sabri's client, and he had done legal work for him. He was his client, and he did not have a credit card in order to register for the auction. The deadline was approaching for registration, and Mr. Sanders asked his attorney to register on his behalf. He put the money up. He said, I don't have a credit card. I'll pay you, to register for me. And then Mr. Sanders then went on to bid for the properties and then pay for the properties and get the property in his name deeded to him. So that's what happened.
So I'm just making sure I'm clear. So Mr. Sanders bidded on the properties, but he used some kind of way. He used Mr. Sabri because Sabri was a registered bidder, so he would have had to some kind of way use his information as a bidder.
He utilized his attorney to help him become a bidder in the auction. Yes.
So in essence, Mr. Sabri was bidding on the properties, or was Mr. Sanders?
Mr. Sanders was bidding on the property. If we have the records, we would indicate, if we wanted to really get to the real technical detail of this, the bidding is recorded very meticulously. And if we wanted to go back and determine when the bids were submitted for that property, and what time they were submitted, and what the people what they were doing at that particular time, you would be able to see that Mr. Sanders was doing the bidding on the property, even though Adam Sabri was the official registered bidder.
So are you saying that someone else can bid on the properties using someone else's bidding information? I mean, how does that work?
Absolutely, yes. I
That's what
can
I'm just
explain
trying to-
that.
Yeah, well, explain that.
Yeah, I'd like to
so we
explain
can
that to you.
understand
Oftentimes, we have a number of nonprofits and others, and for-profit people, who bid on behalf of others. They register registration for auction to buy one property is $2,500 deposit. To buy multiple properties is a $10,000 deposit. Many individuals don't have that money, so what they do, they'll join in with someone who puts up the $10,000 deposit, and then they'll bid on their behalf. And so these individuals are registered bidders, but they're bidding under the instruction of someone else, or that other individual might be bidding, as Mr. Sanders did in this case, bidding on property that they're interested in themselves. Because the bidding is open now, they're in, so to speak. They can bid. So a number of people hire people to bid for them, and this is one of the cases where you have United Community Housing Coalition, for instance. What they'll do is they'll bid for 40 or 50 people in the auction, because many of the individuals can't afford the $2,500 deposit, or they're unsophisticated in terms of dealing with the auction. And it's very, you have to pay attention, you have to watch when the bids, what's going on, and it's confusing to many, so they hire somebody else to do it. That's what happens.
So in this case, Mr. Sabri, your son, Adam Sabri, is the listed registered bidder.
Yes.
And Mr. Sanders was bidding under his name. Is that what you're saying?
That's what happened. And to give you the background of the point of telling you that he was his client is that Adam Sabri was not a contracted bidder, so to speak. He was helping his client. That's
He's
why
a registered bidder.
That's why he's a
with the
registered
Lincoln.
bidder. Yeah, it's very clear. I said it many, many times.
And-
He's a registered bidder.
And who would have completed the affidavit then? Since each bid has to have an affidavit, it states here in
Right.
your information that you send out to the general public.
Right.
Each bidder has to submit an affidavit stating that they have no financial interest in the property in which they're bidding on. Who would have completed that affidavit then?
Well, here's how the affidavits work. The statute says that since 2015, that anyone that buys property cannot, it says anybody who buys property or bids in the auction cannot have a blight tickets or delinquent taxes. So the way we actually implement that, based on the intent of this statute is to prevent people who are bad actors from coming in and participating in the auction year after year when they already have back taxes and blight violations. That's the intent of the legislation. The way we implement it is we don't prevent people from bidding based on an affidavit, but we prevent the deeds from being issued to an individual based on an affidavit. So if, say, 5,000 people register to bid in the auction, and 1,000 individuals actually become successful bidders, we're only checking the 1,000 successful bidders because of the fact that to check the 5,000 registered bidders would be really a waste of resources for us to go out and check all of these individuals, and they're not even going to buy anything. So we do it the other way around. We know that if you buy property, you put up a $10,000 deposit, that you're not going to walk away from your $10,000 deposit, and you're not going to walk away from your your purchase and give up the properties. You're going to go ahead and pay those tickets and pay those taxes in order to finish your sale. So that's the way it's implemented, and that's how the intent of the legislation works. And it works because people who want to buy the properties are going to pay those taxes and pay the blight tickets. And we hold up their deeds until they do. So that's how it works.
But that's not the question I was asking. The question I was asking is who actually completed the affidavit then? If Cortez Sanders was bidding under Sabri, Adam Sabri's bidding license or his registered bidding, that status as a registered bidding, the affidavit would have had to have been completed by who? Who completed
It
the
would have been
affidavit?
completed by Adam Sabri.
So your son would have completed the affidavit
Well-
stating that he has no interest in the property that's being
Exactly.
bidded on, even though he was not bidding on the property.
Right. He had no interest in the property.
So he completed an affidavit stating,
He would be the one that would have completed the affidavit.
but you stated that the person bidding on the property was not him. It was this Cortez Sanders. But he did participate then. You're saying he
Who
was
participated?
Adam Sabri was participating in the process. Then. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the point of the matter is,
Because before,
Because
when you
he's a
see,
registered bidder.
I just want to finish. Because before, when you were here, the last meeting, you stated that this person, Mr. Sanders, used his bidding license and did all the bidding, and it came out in his name, but he didn't actually participate in the bidding. But now you're saying today, it seems like you're saying he was actually engaged.
no, you just, maybe you misunderstood me.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to start over,
Okay.
all right? Adam Sabri was assisting Cortez Sanders in registering for the auction.
In registering for
In
the
registering for the auction. In doing so, and you have to have a credit card to register for the auction. Mr. Sanders didn't have a credit card, so Adam Sabri, his attorney, used his credit card to register for the auction on behalf of Mr. Sanders, Cortez Sanders.
Well, let me just back up next. Now I'm a little confused a little more because when you said registering for the auction, don't you have to be a bidder to register? So
No, you
was
don't.
helping him to register as a bidder.
Actually, last time I was here, I did mention, and maybe it was misunderstood also, that you don't have to be a bidder if you're registered for the auction. Everyone registers for the auction. All of our staff members register for the auction. In order to see what's going on in the auction, you have to register.
Okay.
But you can't bid unless you pay a deposit. So you can't be a registered bidder unless you actually pay the deposit. But you can be registered and not be a bidder. If you don't put up the money, you're not going to be a bidder. So that's the difference.
So Cortez Sanders was just going to register, but Mr. Sabri was going to do the bidding. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
So what's the point of being a registered person then? If
The
you
point
can't
of being
bid
a
on the
registered
property?
person is that you can see what's going on in the auction. You can watch the activity in the auction.
So
That's the point of that. That's all. It had nothing to do with Cortez Sanders or at all.
So Cortez Sanders was just going to register and watch the auction. He
No,
wasn't
no,
going to bid
no,
on the property.
no,
Is that what you're saying?
no, sir. No, sir. Let me go back again. Start over. Cortez Sanders wanted to buy properties in the auction. He called his attorney,
unless
Adam
he's a bidder.
Sabri.
But he couldn't do that unless he was a bidder, right? Because
He couldn't participate unless he registered as a bidder for the auction.
Okay, so as a bidder,
Right.
not just registered.
Right. He
Because
couldn't
before-
participate unless he was a registered bidder.
Okay.
So he called his attorney, said, it's a last minute deadline. I need to register for the auction. I don't have a credit card. Can you do this for me? So he's helping him out, helping his client. He registered for the auction. He paid the money that Mr. Cortez Sanders gave him in cash. He put it on his credit card. He used his credit card. The attorney used his credit card, registered, and then Mr. Sanders took the position of where Adam Sabri was and actually participated in the auction, bid on the properties, and got the property, paid for the property, and got the deed issued in his name.
Ms. Bussiero.
Good morning, Mr. Sabri.
Good morning.
I just have a few questions pertaining to the bidder statement that you provided. By the way, thank you for providing this to us.
You're very welcome, ma'am.
So this bidder statement, do you have it in front of you?
I have it nearby. I can get it.
Okay, could you read the parcel identifier number on that, just so we can get that into the record, please?
Give me 1 second, I'm digging it out. Here we go. We got it. We have it.
The parcel identifier is 130-23273.
Okay, thank you. And what date was the bid made by, according to this paper, Mr. Adam Sabri?
That's October 24th, 2017.
Okay. And generally, after a bid and closing where the property is paid for, how long does it take for the treasurer's office to issue the deed for that property to the buyer?
Usually 30 days or a little bit more,
Okay.
around 30 days or more.
Okay, now I'm going to look at this quitclaim deed that you also provided with Cortez Sanders and Ashley Carter Ritter's name on it. And what is does the tax ID, parcel ID match the bidder statement for this deed that you provided for us?
Yes, it does.
And can you read us the date that this quitclaim deed was issued?
November 16th, 2017.
Would this have been issued directly from the treasurer's office, or would the deed have been issued to Adam Sabri, and then he would have issued a quitclaim deed to Cortez
This
Sanders?
deed was issued directly from the treasurer's office to the person who's listed on here as the grantee.
Okay. All right, and then, so about 3 weeks after the bid was placed, this deed was issued directly from the treasurer's office to Cortez Sanders and Ashley Carter Ritter.
That's correct.
Okay, and the price, the bids match. This is the price paid, correct?
Yes.
And then, now, did you have any knowledge of this in 2017?
No, I did not.
Do you generally have knowledge of Adam Sabri's dealings with his clients?
I do not.
He doesn't discuss this with you?
I don't ask about his clients, and he doesn't volunteer information about his clients, about his dealings.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Just a couple, if I can.
Yes, Mr. Young.
Mr. Sabri, thank you for appearing here again today and answering these questions. Just a couple, following up on the last set of questions as it relates to that deed. So this was conveyed and drafted and delivered to Ms. Cortez Sanders directly from the treasurer's office. There was, as far as the deed that I'm looking at, that is dated November 16, 2017. That's clear.
That's correct.
And the process that was used to finish that transaction following the bidding, the acceptance of the bid, acceptance of the money, the processing of the deed, is that the process that is utilized in all conditions or all circumstances or in all of these matters?
Yes, it is.
So this deed that I'm looking at isn't different from what I would find if I was looking at another property that was transferred on or about the same time.
It's no different.
All right. And if I looked at the Register of Deeds before November 16, 2017, I would see that this property was in some sort of a forfeiture or forfeited or foreclosed state in the control of the Wayne County Treasurer's Office.
Right. The Register of Deeds would show that there was a judgment foreclosure recorded on behalf of the foreclosing governmental unit, which is the Wayne County Treasurer's Office.
And the next transaction I would see would be the deed that we're looking at.
Yes.
And I noticed your signature at the bottom. Is that something that you actually sign yourself, or is that one of those mechanical signatures?
It was an electronic signature, and
right.
so is the notary on there as well.
Which is standard because of what, there's so many of these things going out, and it just gets put into a process that's in place.
Right.
Or I guess I should say, it gets issued pursuant to a process that's in place.
It's in conjunction with the advanced work that the Register of Deeds has been doing to expedite the issuance of deeds.
All right. And following up just on what Ms. Bucciero indicated is I just want to make this clear, at least understand it. So if this process occurred on or about October 24th, 2017, when the bid was successfully accepted, and then through whatever, November 17th, 2017, prior to that date, to those dates, is your testimony that you never had any communication with your son or received any information at all of the fact that your son was involved in this process in the manner that you have explained?
Yes, that's my testimony. I had no knowledge of his involvement at all.
All right, and it wasn't until sometime after, when this matter was brought to some public level, that you found out about this and you became aware of what happened.
I
Fair statement?
read about it in the newspaper.
Okay.
That's my first information regarding this transaction.
All right, I look at the information that you and your attorney have provided. You talk about the 2008 purchases and the 2011 purchases, and in reference to, why we're here, at least what power we have is the enactment of the ordinance that we're charged with trying to apply and enforce. And the somewhat compelling, the very compelling argument that this ordinance was not enacted until 2012, which was after these purchases that we talked about. But you also talked in there about some of the procedures that have unfolded prior to this and after it. We do agree, don't we, that whatever the procedures or policies are in the treasurer's office on any given date, that is the policy and the procedure that you and everyone in the office are supposed to adhere to. I mean,
Right.
fair statement?
I did. I already admitted to that.
Yeah.
A number of times.
Okay.
And I agree to that. Also, I would say that the policies and procedures are exactly that, policies and procedures. And just because they're policies and procedures doesn't mean that they represent a conflict of interest.
No, I get that. I understand that. I'm not suggesting that it does, but you raised some points. I just want to understand this we're in it now, so I'm just trying to make sure I understand, what your testimony is, whether it has an impact or not. I mean, we'll process it the way it is. But there seem to be some variations in the way this policy was drafted, in the changes, not by you or not just by you, but by your predecessor, Mr. Witovich. I think you indicated in 2010 that the policy was changed or the decision was made to go to an outside contractor, and that went on for a period of 5 years, something like that.
It went on for 4 years. Yes.
4 years, okay.
Yes. And that was, excuse me, I wanted to say the reason that was done is that the auction used to be held on the 8th floor in the ballroom of 400 Monroe. It was a live auction. But because of the number of foreclosures, the drastic increase of foreclosures, this became impossible to do. So the treasurer looked for a way to do an online auction so that it could be more manageable for the staff and for the public.
I remember those days.
Yes.
That was pretty crazy up there. In any event, the change was made in 2010, somewhere around that time, and that change was made by Mr. Witovich.
Yes, it
I think
was.
your testimony was that it was Mr. Witovich's right, obligation, whatever, those might be my words, not yours, but it was his decision or the treasurer's decision to decide what policies, what the process was going to be to take care of these transfers or these sales for the most part.
That's true. I stated in May at the last hearing that the treasurer reserves the right to make the decision on these policies. One of the things that's important to note is that in 2017, early in 17, I put out an RFP for a audit by an operational audit, and Plant Moran won the bid and started conducting an operational audit in our office. And this is something that I called for. Nobody asked me to do it. And to go through all of our policies and procedures throughout the entire office. And they did that, and we're still implementing today some of the things that haven't yet been implemented, reviewing all of the recommendations from our operational audit. So this is something that we knew that we needed to review. It wasn't something that was given to us from outsiders telling us that we need to review it. It was something that we thought of beforehand and started working on it.
And all of this filters up to the decision maker, which is the treasurer.
That's right.
And I guess, as I understand it, then in 2014, there was some changes made, or maybe I'm looking at 2015 and 16, where a change or a modification to the rules was to remove the restriction of family members participating in whatever that means in the auction process.
Yes.
And that decision would have been made by Mr. Witovich.
Yes.
And then in 2017 and 18, the rule had been changed again with some exception or conducted by the treasurer when it came to the purchases. And you were the treasurer at that time, but I thought you indicated that you didn't know how that rule change had occurred.
I was the treasurer at the time, and I said that I had no knowledge of the rule being changed. So that rule was changed without proper authorization because I had no knowledge of it. And even though I'm the treasurer, I didn't even know the rule was changed at the time.
But you were the only one that should have been making that change.
That's true. And that's why they have to have now a series of sign-offs for any changes to be made on the auction rules, any other rules that we have.
So the fact that you were the one that makes the changes, ultimately has the decision, and no one else does, do you recognize the change that was made in 2017 as applicable?
I mean, it's an official policy of the office right now.
All right, so that is what it, even though you didn't make it, it's something that you agreed to, or that.
I just found out
right.
that it was added recently, and so therefore it's still there. It hasn't been changed.
Thank you.
I just want to follow up this really quickly. You had, I believe you became, is it true you became deputy
Excuse me,
treasurer?
Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman.
Yes.
Could you ask people in the audience to be quiet?
Sure. Thank you for that. Please, ladies and gentlemen, I ask that you show a modicum of respect for the people that are here today. Please keep your voices down. If you want to have any conversations, please exit the room. Okay? We are here. We want to show each and every person here the respect that they deserve. They're here today. This is official government business that we're taking care of, and we do want to make sure we're being mindful of each person's feelings. So if you want to have any side conversations, please take it out in the hallway. Thank you so much. I apologize for that, Mr. Sabri. Now we're going to get back to this. I think you had stated that you became deputy treasurer back in 2011. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And at that time, did you partake in or did you have any, any dealings with respect to the auction at that time? I understand you, at some point, you noticed it went to an Oxide online agency, as you stated.
Yes.
Did you have any dealings with the auction?
Well, as a deputy for land management, part of my responsibilities was the auction itself.
So you saw the documents that you oversaw the auction itself. You saw documents that was presented for people who wanted to come in and bid on the auction. Is that?
I was reviewing the auction as part of my responsibilities.
Okay. So you would have seen if people wanted to participate in the auction and that you would have seen any sort of documents they would have had to sign to participate in the auction to become bidders or anything else. Is that?
That's not correct.
Okay.
Because I wouldn't get to that level of detail as the deputy of the land management.
Okay. So did you know any of the documents that went out to the general public?
The things that were published on the website, the auction rules and policies, those are the things that I would have looked at and reviewed.
Okay. And just getting back to what your attorney had talked about, there was a document from David Szymanski. It was between Cynthia Yoon and I believe you were CC'd on that document. That was, looking at the date of that document. Do you have that anywhere nearby? I know your attorney just referenced that when we first started.
He does. He just needs a second to look at it.
Yes, I have it here.
And the date of this document, I'm looking at the date of this email, is Friday, April 25th, 2014. Do you see that?
Yes, I do. I do see it.
And I'm just going to go down to the bottom there where it first starts, looking at the email chain. Now, it seems like this is Mr. Szymanski talking to Ms. Yoon. And if I'm correct, the signature block there says Ms. Yoon is the Wayne County Corporation Counsel. Was she Corporation Counsel?
She's on the tax team, an attorney for our tax team, and she is a member of Corporation Counsel. She's assistant Corporation Counsel.
Okay, so she's Assistant Corporation Counsel. And in this, Mr. Szymanski asks her, I'm just going to read. It says, a question has arisen as to the ability of employees of this office to participate in the auctions. And Mr. Szymanski was in the treasurer's office. He was the chief deputy treasurer. He says, goes on, I seem to recall we indicated this was not permissible. Also, what about families? I suggest we not allow employees to participate in light of having sealed bids. I think it's best to so proceed. Your thoughts? So it seems like he's asking for Ms. Cynthia Yoon's opinions. And right above that, she responds, and she says, and I think your attorney did mention this, She stated here, the WCT rules prohibit, and that's the Wayne County Treasurer's rules prohibit. And she goes on the list. Now, and she states here, contractors of the treasurer, their employees, and employees of the treasurer, members of the immediate family of a contractor or treasurer employee, including children and stepchildren, parents, grandparents, siblings, aunts, uncles, nephews, nieces, and first cousins are strictly prohibited from participating directly or indirectly in the bidding and purchasing by any means, including and not limited to joint ventures or assignments of any foreclosed property. And you were CC'd on that. So when she read that, you didn't take that to be her opinion, did you?
No, I'd say that I took that to be her reading the rule.
Okay, so you understood that to be what the rule was at that time?
Yes.
Okay. And then I'm just looking at, because you mentioned that you would have seen things that would have been on the website. And here, I'm looking at a document. Again, these documents were turned over by your attorney. And this states the Office of the Wayne County Treasurer's terms and conditions of sale with respect to tax foreclosed property auction and internet bidding. This was dated October 1st to October 28, 2014. This was after this email. And this is a document that went out to the general public with respect to the auction. And in that document, you state here the exact same rules. Contractors of the treasurer, their employees, employees of the treasurer, members of the immediate family of the contractor or treasurer employee, including siblings, so forth and so on, and states the same rule.
That's
So you-
2014, you're reading, right?
Yes, and it's also from the continuation from, I'm looking at the email from 2014, which is Friday, April 25th, and this is October 1st through October 28th, 2014. So it's in the same time frame. So you understood then that family members could not, you understood the rule that family members could not participate in the bidding process, could not participate in the auction, family members of the treasurer's office.
That's
You
true.
understood that? Okay. And
2014, you're talking about.
2014,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
Okay. And as I think was asked of you, you never heard that the rule was ever changed.
Well, I didn't know at the time when the rule was changed. I didn't know at the time when the rule was changed, but in 2015, when the rules were published, the rule had been changed.
And you did mention, too, about the outside, entity that was third party that was handling some of the auctions.
Yes.
Was there ever any email sent out or any sort of memo sent out that stated if the a outside third-party entity was handling the auction, that at that point, members of the treasurer's office, their employees, their family members could at that point participate in the auction?
No, there was not. And if there had been, I would never have admitted that I made a mistake in misinterpreting the rule.
So even though it might have been sort of parts of it might have been subcontracted out to, as you stated, to a third party to run the auction online.
Excuse me, please, one moment. I just wanted to say, you said parts of it. The entire auction was contracted out.
The entire auction?
Yes.
So so the treasurer's office had nothing else to do with the auction after it was sent out. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Just want to, okay. And because I just want to look at, I think you said that was for about 4 years before you said that third-party entity was taking place, running the auction. You had said online. And one of the documents your attorney did provide for us, this is from September 2013. The auction will be conducted by internet by realauction.com. Is that one of the third-party auctions that had taken place?
We hired two companies. 2010-11 was bid for assets, and 2012 and 2013 was the one you just mentioned.
Okay, because I'm just looking at this
Real
document
auction.
that was posted online here, also with respect to the auction and the bidding process. And it states here that the auction will be conducted on the internet by realauction.com. But down here it says, I'm going to go through 5, 6, 7, 8. It says, at the sole discretion of the treasurer, the auction may be extended. Number 6, the treasurer reserves the right to reject any bid. Number 7, the treasurer reserves the right to withdraw a property from the auction. Number 8, the treasurer reserves the right to cancel the sale of a property at any time prior to the issuance of the deed. Number 8, the property will be awarded to the registered bidding submitting the highest amount provided the bid is equal to or greater to the minimum bid. The treasurer may change a minimum bid at any time prior to the opening of an auction and reflect new costs and expenses that may have been incurred. So the treasurer was actually still participating even though this third-party entity was online.
Well, it's statutory requirements. You can't give up your statutory requirements, which the state holds the treasurer or the foreclosing governmental unit responsible for certain things. So you can't give up those requirements.
But what I'm asking,
in other words,
what I'm stating, this is not statutory requirement. What I'm stating is that what you said that you handed off to a third party, they were running the auction. It seems as like the treasurer was still actively engaged in making all decisions, all final decisions with respect to the auction. It seems as though the auction was being run online that you had mentioned, but here it states here that the treasurer was still fully engaged and could come in and rescind any bid if it so chose.
well, that is
This is the language that you have here in the documents.
the people in charge, the people at the Bid for Assets and Real Auction they were difficult to deal with because they actually were controlling the auction, and for us to come in, step in, and cancel sales, we have to have the ability to cancel sales, because sometimes the treasurer's office makes mistakes on noticing people, and it would be foolish to continue with the auction if you found out that you failed to give a proper notice, because then you end up deeding the property to someone, having to go back and trying to undo the deal. So we had to have a right to go in and cancel a sale, remove a property from the auction if it was not supposed to be in the auction. Some people have redeemed properties before the judgment, and they may have been foreclosed erroneously. So those things had to be put in for the treasurer's office to do.
But as you mentioned before, there was no memo that went out that stated that if the auction was being conducted by a third party, that the prohibitions against people in the treasurer's office, their family members, anyone else participating was never removed. There was no memo, there was no internal memo that went out that you saw or you're aware of.
And once again, I say that if one memo had gone out, I would never have admitted to making an error in allowing my wife to participate in the auction.
And while you bring that up, when was U.S. Development Services Corporation, when was that company founded? Is it U.S. Development Services, LLC? Who was the founding?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll let you finish your question.
I was just going to ask, when was that founded, and who was the founder of that company?
As I mentioned on May 15th, at the last hearing, that company was founded in August of 2002 by Eric Sabri, by me.
Okay. And you remained an officer of that company until when?
Until 2006, when my wife, by resolution, became the owner and managing member of U.S. Development Services.
And you were still listed as a member of that company or an agent of that company?
No, I'm not.
Okay. To this day, are you listed as a member of that company, as a registered agent of that company?
No, I'm not.
As an officer of that company?
No, I'm
in
not.
any capacity? Okay. So at the time of, and so again, you founded the company, but you're saying that your wife took over the company at later time, 2006?
I relinquished ownership of the company in 2006.
Okay. And are you saying in after that, you had no further dealings with that company whatsoever?
I did not say that. I was a limited member with the ability to give legal advice and sign documents.
So you were still a member of the company after
I was a
2006?
limited member with the my role as a limited member was to sign documents and give legal advice.
So were you still listed on documents as being a part of this company after 2006?
Well, as you probably have before you, that when the company failed to file the state reports for 3 years, I went to Lansing to reinstate the company, and when I signed the documents, I signed it as a member. And you probably have those documents in front of you.
So you're still a member?
I'm still not a member. No, I'm not.
So I'm just making sure I'm correct. So you're not a member of the company. You're not listed in the company in any capacity?
I'm not in any capacity. Presently, I'm no longer a member in any capacity in the company.
Okay. And so after 2006, you were no longer limited, registered agent, no longer not an officer or any officer in this company. That's all.
Are you asking me about today, or are you asking about 2006?
Well, actually, I'm asking you about today. I'm asking you about 2006. I'm
Okay,
trying to
good.
find out when did you leave this company?
Okay, in 2006, I relinquished ownership of the company.
Okay.
And I remained as a limited member to sign documents and give legal advice.
When you say you remained as a limited member, what does that mean?
That means that my only role in the company, I had no ownership interest. My only role was to give legal advice and to sign documents.
But you were still a member of the company. You were still a part of
I
this
had no
company.
ownership interest.
But you're still a part of the
I was a
company.
limited member.
Okay.
I'm still a part of it.
Okay. All right.
I can sign documents and give legal advice.
So you could sign documents, give legal advice to the company. Excuse me, again, if we can,
That's
you know,
fair. I just want to say, it's very distracting.
and I appreciate that, Mr. Thomas and Mr. Sabri. Thank you for your patience. Listen, I'm going to state this one more time, and I'm going to be a little strict here. If there's any more outbursts, we will clear the person who is making these outbursts in this room. I'm going to ask the Sergeant of Arms to remove anyone after this that does make any comments while we're speaking. We're not going to have any antagonization here in this room. No antagonistic behavior. Excuse me. I'm losing my voice here, but we're not going to have that. We're going to conduct this hearing with a modicum of respect, as I mentioned. This is going to be my final warning. I'm not going to issue this one more time. Thank you, sir, and I'm going to ask that you forgive that outburst there.
Thank you, sir.
So I'm just trying to get back to, so you said a limited member, and so a limited member, you were still advising the company and giving legal advice.
Still giving legal advice and being able to sign documents, pay bills, and so forth.
Pay bills, sign documents. Okay. And you didn't see that as being actively engaged with this company, just you're paying bills for the company.
Or if I sign documents and give legal advice, I have no ownership interest in the company.
But you were, like you said, you were still a member of the company.
I was a limited member for that purpose.
Do you remember receiving a questionnaire from, I think it was Christine McDonald, back, and I'm going to see if I can find my notes here. Back on April 29, 2019, she sent you a list of questions here, and this was provided also by your attorney. So
Sir, could I please ask what tab you're under, just so I can find it for him?
I'm not sure if this is tabbed, actually. I'm looking at an email from some Mr. Thomas. You're actually listed in the letterhead here on this email. You forwarded, it was Monday, April 29, 2019. It was an email from from Christine McDonald to Bruce Barbiers.
Sir, I think we have it.
Okay.
Yep.
And I'm just looking at some of the questions she had asked you here. And I'm looking at I believe it was number 6 here. And it states here, it appears from auction records that your company, U.S. Development Services, bought 3 properties in Harper Woods in 2011 from the tax auction while you were deputy treasurer and involved in running the auction. The year the Treasurer's Office issued deeds in U.S. Development Services' name for 19436 Washington off for $14,000. 20490 Anita for $28,615, and 19105 Washington off for $15,099. What are the ethics requirements of the Treasurer's Office? Can employees buy from the auction? Did you disclose these purchases to your bosses at the time? Critics could say by purchasing properties at the tax auction, you are personally benefiting from these homes going through foreclosure. How do you respond? And I'm just looking at your answer here. You responded. You stated that your wife has full ownership here. You go down. I'm going to jump down a few. And again, this is what your attorney provided for us. So you have this. I'm going to go down, starting at number 6 of your response. I'm looking at first paragraph, second, third, fourth, fifth paragraph here, where you state the current auction rules prohibit employees from participating in the auction. When U.S. Development Services, LLC purchased property in 2011, I saw no reason to disclose. So you're saying here at this time that at that point in 2011, you were a limited member of this company, advising the company, legal advice, paying their bills, paying the company's bills, and that company was purchasing property from the treasurer's office, that you were a deputy treasurer at that time. So you found no reason to disclose that to your bosses, that the company that I'm advising and giving the legal advice to and paying its bills are also purchasing properties from our auction. Is that, because that's what you wrote here. You said
That's correct.
I saw no reason to disclose that.
That's correct.
And you went on to say the current policy that restricts treasury office employees and their relatives from participating in the auction is an unenforceable policy. It is intrusive and unrealistic. So are you saying there that you just didn't like the policy?
No, I'm just saying this. In order to enforce this policy that we have, you have to, what you have to do is get all the birth certificates, marriage licenses, and do DNA testing of all the employees in order to verify whether these people who are eligible to participate in the auction would be eligible, because this is a very unrealistic and unenforceable policy. That's what I'm saying.
But in sending out the documents that you stated yourself, that you knew the documents that was posted online with respect to the general public participating in an auction, you knew that you were telling the general public that employees of the treasurer's office, their family members, and whoever else cannot participate. So you knew that. So
I already admitted to that.
yeah, so you knew that you're telling the general public, we're not doing this. But in fact, what you're saying is this was happening anyway, and you knew about it.
What I'm saying to you is that I knew the policy existed, and I made an error in misinterpreting whether my wife could participate or not. That's what I'm telling you.
Did you feel that if the general public felt, because this statement telling the general public that the treasurer's office, the employees in the treasurer's office, contractors, any of their family members, immediate, and laying it all out, as I read, could not participate, do you feel that that was, in a way, telling the public that this was an above-board process, that there's no one with internal information sort of engaging in this process?
Absolutely.
So do you think it would change things if the public knew that the people who are actually running the auction were also participating in the auction?
Well, first of all, the people who are running the auction will not participate in the auction.
But you say here your company here was
It wasn't my company.
Well, okay, the company that you were still a member of, that you were advising, paying its bills, as you
I
mentioned.
said signing legal documents, and getting legal advice.
And you said paying its bills.
Well,
you said
if you
paying
sign,
its
if you
bills
sign a check, that could be considered signing documents.
for the company. And okay. All right. Okay, I don't have any further questions. Is there any further questions from any other members?
I do.
Yes, Ms. Becerra.
You served in a legal capacity and reviewed documents that the company received?
Well, I said that my role was limited to giving legal advice and signing documents. I did not say I was the attorney for the company.
Okay. Now, in the course of giving legal advice, were you ever asked to give legal advice on outstanding taxes due?
No, I was not.
Okay. Were you aware of any delinquent taxes for the company at any point?
Yes.
And when did you learn of delinquent taxes being owed by the company?
When my wife showed me the tax bills that came to the house.
Okay. And do you recall what dates those were?
No, I don't.
And were those, to your knowledge, were those bills paid in a timely manner?
When you say timely manner, could
On
you
time.
elaborate? If they were on time, they wouldn't be delinquent.
Right. So, but once you became aware that they were delinquent, timely would mean immediately.
Well, they were put into payment plans.
Were you responsible for that payment plan?
No, I was not.
Do you know who oversaw that payment plan?
My wife did.
No, I mean within the treasurer's office.
Oh, well, it was a number of staff people handle payment plans, including the cashiers.
Okay. And when you became aware of this delinquency, how long had these taxes been delinquent?
Well, they've been delinquent, it's a revolving process. They were delinquent for less than 3 years because after they were delinquent more than 3 years, they would have been foreclosed.
Okay. But you don't know how long it had been?
Well, the properties were purchased in 2011, so I don't know how long they were delinquent. 2012, they became delinquent, and then after that, they were just paid on payment plans. That's what I can tell you.
So the payment plan that you were aware of was established in 2012?
I'm not sure. I don't have that documents in front of me. I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
Were there delinquent taxes in 2018?
There were some delinquent taxes. As of news reports and all the documents that we submitted to the board indicate that there were it was a payment plan in 2018, so it had to be delinquent taxes in 2018.
Okay, and are there still delinquent taxes? Is there a ongoing payment plan as of today?
No, there are no delinquent taxes. No current taxes due, not until July 1st, I guess.
Okay. I didn't see, there's a lot of information here. I've reviewed most of it. I didn't see anything pertaining to specific dates regarding these properties and the payment plans that were related to your wife's company. Have you provided anything like that to us that I just missed?
I think we provided all the documentation that was available on the properties. Yes,
Including the payment plans?
and payment plans.
So could you tell us the date? So you should be able to tell us the date that it was established.
Well, I can't tell you that because a lot of the properties were paid. They were paid under payment plans. Some of them were paid in order to pay the 60% to keep them out of foreclosure.
Okay.
And so forth. So I couldn't tell you which ones were in the payment plan, what dates they started in the payment plans. I don't know. We went through all the documents. We had the FOIA request from Detroit News. We had all the other people asking for the same thing. So we went through this, scouring through these documents as much as possible to give as much information as we have. Yeah.
So the properties were purchased in 2011.
Yes.
They went into delinquency in 2012,
Right.
correct?
Right.
And then a payment plan was immediately established, to your knowledge?
I'm not sure. I'm not prepared to answer the details on how the payment plans, when they were established, which properties were in the payment plans, how much was paid. I'm not in a position to answer that. I think I don't have the documents in front of me today. I couldn't tell you.
So would the treasurer's office keep that kind of information on record?
Yes, we should have provided it. If you don't have it, then
If you could tell us what tab you're under, your office.
Our paperwork isn't tabbed.
Well, I tabbed it all when I gave it to Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, could you tell us what section of your letter they're on? You don't know?
I don't know which tab they're referring to because I gave the box to the county because it was a box on the tissue.
we delivered a large box of documents.
You know, under item U, Mr. Williams requested on your behalf the list of foreclosed properties and records relating to them. I provided 1,744 pages of materials. I don't want to make any assumptions, but I think it might be in there. I can't say that for sure.
This was recent.
Because the documents that we have are only for 2018. It says, like this pay plan expires on 10/31/2018, and it only shows payments to be made for the year 2018.
If I provided that would have been in response to a direct question. That's what I would have been asked for, and Mr. Williams' letter.
I think that's all they provided for us.
I don't know, I can't tell. He might be able to find it.
He's looking for it? Okay.
What was this? E, would it be in there? We could try E, tab E. You said you don't have tab numbers, but
We-
is it E, Mr. Williams? You don't have one.
I don't have the hard copy. I gave them.
Is this it, Eric? Does this have anything to do with that?
Which one was it? Were you saying E?
I mean, it's, I'm looking for the specific, because I don't know that we have a complete tax history.
And I just don't see payment plans on there.
E is not the payment.
May I take a look at this?
Which one?
I just want to see.
S, yes.
Yeah, the only documents that we seem to have are from 2018. What I'm asking is specifically when the payment plan started, who participated in the decision, and how long the properties had been delinquent before they went into a payment plan. So that's 3 questions.
Well, you could ask them those questions today. I provided the information that I had, and I didn't get any further feedback from the board or its council. That's what I provided. That's what we have. I don't recall being specifically asked a question for all prior years. I don't. And I've gone through Mr. Williams' questions that he asked today, and I don't see that in there. So he'll answer the questions as best. Just maybe you could break it down one at a time. He either knows or he doesn't know.
And just for the record, the payment plans that were attached here, the payment plans that are attached here really deal with delinquent taxes from 2015 because they did relate back to the 2015 tax year. So this plan appears to have come up in 2018.
I would have responded to Mr. Williams' questions, and I would have given him the information, and if somebody could point out to me where it is, I'll dig it out. If not, maybe you could just ask him.
I will just ask him, to your knowledge, when did these properties related to your wife's company become delinquent in property taxes?
Okay, 2012. If you don't pay your taxes currently to the municipality the next year, March 1st of the next year, they become delinquent. So March 1st of 2012, those taxes actually the 2011 purchases became delinquent. Now, the properties that were purchased in 2008 would have become delinquent in 2009. I'm not sure. Some of them were paid right, like within a few years, and then I can't tell you. I don't know. You know, I wasn't involved in paying them. I wasn't involved in keeping up with it, so I don't really know. I can't tell you. The records could speak for themselves, but I don't have them with me.
Okay.
Well, you may have them.
We may have them. We don't. We gave 1,700 documents to the board,
Right.
so I don't know if they're in there or not.
Just,
I'd like to correct that. I think we gave you 2,200 pages.
2,200.
One attachment was 1,744 pages.
and just through the chair, again, item 3T includes a summary of payments made by this U.S. Development Services Company.
Oh, that's true. The
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Ms. Becerril, just so you know, what Mr. Williams is referring to is our tab section 3T where we gave you that information.
Right.
Okay, I just want to make that clear.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good way of looking to see when payments were made. We have the transaction, the payment history is in for all the properties. We have a payment history. So if you look at the payment history, you can see when the payments were made, how much they were made, and the dates they were made.
Okay, and when did you learn that they became delinquent? Did you answer 2012? Is that what I heard?
I don't remember when I knew they became delinquent.
It was just sometime within the course of that, your wife showed you some statements,
Yes.
and immediately following that, when you became aware, immediately following that, did she start the process to?
I think she had already started it before then. But I just, like I said, when I became aware of it, that's when I'm telling you. I don't know.
Yeah, because that's what I'm interested in, is when you became aware. So you don't know, you had no involvement, is what you're saying, in getting these properties into the payment plan?
The establishment of the payment plans.
Yes.
No, I just told, I think I told my wife, there's a call 2 or 3 different people on the staff. If you want to set up a payment plan, they'll tell you what you have to do. And that's why I try to keep arm's length away from dealing with that. Because we had, and Dave Shemansky was our chief deputy, and we had established that we would keep arm's length away from any kind of friends and family who came in to try to get involved with these plans, because it was always, a problem when somebody says, I know the treasurer, I know the deputy, can you get me some kind of special payment plan? So we had a meeting agreement that we would keep arm's length away from doing it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. In just a minute, I'm going to ask Mr. Williams how far back those dates go.
Oh, the actual payment plans?
Yes.
Well, that I can't answer. They just show a complete history of the payments for the properties that U.S. Development owned, going all the way back to 2002 in some instances.
Okay, so
Would you like a copy of it? I could let you see my copy.
That's
It's
okay.
under tab 3T.
Oh, you have it right here? Okay, let's see. But yeah, this is not only the payment plan, this is just payment of taxes in general.
They're all,
Let her ask a question.
Do you have this in front of you?
Mr. Williams, tab 3T?
Yes.
He will in one moment, ma'am.
Okay.
Just for the record, I'm handing him the payment plans for 18079 Wyoming, 18055 Wyoming, and 18045 Wyoming. Payment history, I'm sorry.
Now, these are what are we looking at here? These are these records from the county treasurer's office?
Yes, they are.
And looking at these records, it says payment history, and it gives a parcel ID number. Looking at this, how do I know I'm looking at a property that's under a payment plan and one that is not under a payment plan?
You would never know by looking at this. This is just a payment history.
Okay. So how would I be able to tell if this property was under a payment plan? How would I learn that from county records?
Well, you have to get a copy of the payment plan. See, the payment plans are electronically done since 2015, or I think 15 or 16. 15, the year before I became treasurer. Before then, they were handwritten. So I don't know if all the handwritten payment plans are available because they might be down in the basement somewhere in a file, or they may be in the file cabinet. But all the payment plans would be in the records somewhere if there were payment plans.
So prior to 2015, they would probably not be easily available, is what you're telling me.
That's what I'm telling you.
Okay. Okay, I don't have any more questions regarding this. Thank you.
I just have a couple quick questions regarding the payment plan. Just a few questions again, just to follow up regarding the payment plans and that. Now, how does the payment plan come into play? Is that generally a person receives a foreclosure notice? Is that how it works, and they can come in and set up a payment plan to start paying their delinquent taxes?
There's two different types of payment plans. So to answer your question, I have to explain the two different types of payment plans, if you don't mind.
No, sure, go right
Okay. The first type of payment plan is for the owner-occupant. Owner-occupant can come in and get into a payment plan. That means you own the house, you live in the house, your residential property. You come in and get into a payment plan anytime, whether you're facing foreclosure or not. As long as you have delinquent taxes, you can come in and get into a payment plan, and the interest rate is less, 6% a year instead of 18% a year. And that payment plan is good for 5 years, if you need it for 5 years. You also have to pay your current taxes each year in order to stay eligible for that plan. The next type of payment plan is, we call it a stipulated payment agreement. It's for anyone else other than owner-occupants. Those payment plans are renewed every year. And depending on when the person comes in, they put down a percentage, and then in 10 months, that would be paid off. So if you come in November, when we offer the payment plans each year, you put 10% down, pay 10% a month, and it's designed that you would have 60% paid by the beginning of June. So then your payment plan, you have 60% paid, and sometimes we would go down to 50% because of the fact that the payment date in June might be June 15th, but the cutoff date for it may be June 5th. So for the person that has a payment date in June, we would go back to 50% because that person would be penalized because their payment date was after the deadline. So we would go back to say 50%. Now, most of the time, that's what we do. If the amount is paid, that person is removed from foreclosure. They wouldn't get foreclosed. And then they would have the rest of the year or the rest of the whatever time left on those 10 months to pay those taxes for that year. And then in November, if they didn't have the balance paid, they would come back in and get into a new payment plan for the next year. They don't have to get into a payment plan, but as long as they pay the amount that's due before the foreclosure deadline, they will still be safe from foreclosure. But that's how the payment plans work. If you have multiple properties, you also can get into a bundle agreement, which a bundle agreement allows you to pay one payment, and the properties, the tax are applied, it protects the whole bundle of properties, and we get one payment. It's a little bit, not complicated, but it's just a little more involved in doing bundles. But that's basically how a payment plan works.
So, and when is the foreclosure notices generated? How does that work? Is
Okay.
it going back 3 years, the property taxes are outstanding? Is that how the foreclosure notices are sent out?
Okay, just bear with me because
Sure.
I'll walk through the steps. The first year, of delinquency is called delinquent. The second year is called forfeiture. The second year of delinquency. And this right now, we're in 2019, and we're sending out notices for those properties that are forfeited, and they're facing foreclosure in 2020. So people start getting notices, they're getting mail, and then they're going to get a personal visit to their property with a yellow bag taped on the door sometime in September, October of this year, if their property is in danger of foreclosure for 2020. But that doesn't mean they're going to get foreclosed. It just means that they're in danger of foreclosure, and they could get into a payment plan or pay the amount required to stay out of foreclosure.
So first there's a forfeiture stage.
Yes.
That goes back, are you saying about 2 years? And
The
then,
second year of delinquency is a forfeiture stage, and that's when the lien is placed on the property, and the interest goes from 1% a month to 1.5% a month, but it's retroactive to the beginning of the first year of delinquency. It goes retroactively back. So you end up paying what they call forfeiture fees when that happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then after that, there's a foreclosure notice goes out? Is
And
that
then-
how it
then
works?
sometime
if they
before-
don't come in to work out some sort of...
If they don't come in and pay the third year of delinquency, which would be, if you were dealing with this right now, it would be the 2017 taxes. It would be 2017 taxes. If they're not paid by sometime in August of this year, or if a certain amount is not paid by August of this year, then you're going to get one of those yellow bags on the door and letting you know that your property could be foreclosed.
Those yellow bags, when they go out and put those on the door, or they put those on the door, is that after 2 years? That's 3 years.
That's after 2 years,
2 years.
in between the second and third year.
Okay.
Yes.
And those are yellow bags, that packet information that they tell a person that they're delinquent taxes? Is that-
Yes, there's a lot of information in the bags telling what to do. We have show cause hearings. We have a lot of educational information, nonprofits that are available to assist them in case they have issues like probate court or someone in the family died, they don't know what to do. We have it in about 5 or 6 different languages in the literature. And
Do you keep a copy of that for each property that you send out, that it goes into forfeiture, that you've notified the homeowner or someone at the home that we've notified them of this forfeiture so that they can come in and pay the taxes? Or
we have a copy of that, of the records, and many other people ask for these records through a FOIA request.
so you keep a copy of that?
We keep a copy of it. We have an electronic copy at the provider, the contractor that goes out and does this. They send us electronic files of all the pictures of the property, the affidavits that they actually delivered it, and photographs of the yellow bags on the doors, so that we can show people that, yes, you did get a notice. And our attorneys use it in court quite a bit.
And those are, how are those generated? Are they generated just when a property is 2 years behind, then those forfeiture notices will go out, and then if there's no response, then there's a packet placed on the door?
That's true.
Okay, and those are just random, those go out based on the status of that property and its taxes, delinquent taxes. Is that how it works?
Could you answer again?
So if a property becomes delinquent, if it's 2 years out, and then you send out a foreclosure notice, a forfeiture notice, and then there's a copy of that made, there's a record of that forfeiture notice going out. Then at some point you said if they don't come in and take care of the taxes, then there is a packet placed on the door. And there's a packet letting them know to come in and work this out, pay your taxes. That's how it works?
Yes, that's basically how it works.
Okay. And you wouldn't have anything would you have anything to do with that personally, or that's just randomly done?
No,
based on
that's
the
true.
property?
That's done by computer, basically. It's on all the files are put in, and this data is sent, to the contractors. And usually, the only time I would see these records is when we publish it in the legal news. And it's a legal news issue that comes out once a year in December with all those properties listed. And that's when I might take a look at it and just files through it and see what properties are facing foreclosure, because I don't have time to deal with it, and it's not something that I would do. It's an IT function. these IT folks, they're just sending files back and forth,
And so
That's what they do.
the IT people or the computer people would generate these forfeiture notices. They go out to the contractors, and the contractors go out and put out the packets on the doors.
contractors actually get the files and they print them from our files.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the properties that we're talking about that were owned by your wife, there would have been going back if any property was going back 2 years, there would have been forfeiture notice sent out if the property was delinquent in taxes. There would have been a forfeiture notice sent out. It would have been randomly generated. It would have been sent out.
If it was delinquent at the time that the notices were going out in August, sometime in August, they would have received something.
Okay. Because I don't recall your attorney ever showing to turn over any forfeiture notices that went out to any of the properties owned by.
I don't think we were asked for those.
Okay. Well, we would like to see that because we would like to see that these forfeiture notices.
No, let me just.
Any forfeiture notices for the properties that we have listed that went out.
No, we weren't requested, they weren't requested in Mr. Williams' letter. We've been here twice. We provided all documents that we were able to produce in response to his request. And I will tell you right now today, my client and I have discussed this at length. After today's proceeding, we're finished. If you're going to be bringing in any other records, I will attend. But I've made him available for what is essentially cross-examination on 2 different dates.
And we know, and we understand that, sir. What I'm asking for, and again, I believe this, I looked at the letter that Mr. Williams turned over. It was quite extensive, and we did ask for all those documents. So you did provide payment plan information for some of these properties. However, what I'm asking for is, and because it's not in the packet, and as you can see, I've gone through this packet extensively, there's no forfeiture notices. And I've heard from Mr. Sabri that these notices will go out and they're generated randomly after 2 years of delinquency. And so I'm asking, and he stated, and you just heard him, that we keep a record of it. It goes into the file. The file is sent over to a contractor. He said it is requested, and that file, if the person doesn't come in and pay these delinquent taxes, there's a packet placed on the door. And he said that is kept in the record. So again, and knows we asked for everything. There was an extensive record sent out. I think it was a 2-page letter that Mr. Williams sent to your office requesting all of these documents. And again, that is not in these records. That would have shown that these properties actually had gone through some sort of forfeiture plan or something, or the process that's generally set up.
Well, I'll tell you, this is my position on it. At the conclusion of the last hearing, I was requested to produce a document. Before I walked out of here, I said I want to make clear that I know what is being requested of me. There's one document requested, and I complied with that request. What we're not going to do is we're not going to take part in an ongoing proceeding where we're the only party that is participating, and the primary party that initiated the complaint has not participated at all. So what I'm telling you is, with all due respect, we believe we have cooperated. We believe that we have provided the documents that you requested. And back on May 8th, when I submitted that pack of 22 or 2,300 pages of documents, if Mr. Williams or anyone else felt that I didn't provide something that was requested, it could have been requested of me. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to have a continuation of this proceeding going back, coming forward. The implication might be, if we provided those documents, what would be expected? Would I be expected to bring my client back again to testify concerning those documents? We're just not going to get into that. We don't believe that we've been treated fairly so far, and that's really the primary motivation for our making a determination that today is it for us.
Okay, well, that's fine. I actually think you have been treated fairly, so I'm going to defer with you on that, but I do think we have been treated fairly. Okay. I think we appreciate your client coming in and being here and taking the time, but these are serious allegations. You know about them. You know the media has been all in the media. This room is filled because people want to find out some of these answers to these questions. It's been listed that his companies have been buying property company that he's listed in, whether allegedly his family members participated in. These are serious allegations. So he's here to address those allegations. So, and I do think the way we've conducted this proceeding, he has been treated fairly. He has been here. We've asked him questions. We requested information, and that information was extensive. Upon going through the documents that banker's box, I think right before the last meeting that you provided, Some members at this table had not even received those documents. So again, just going through, you've heard discussions here today of documents that just had not been provided. We're still asking for it. With respect to payment plans, we've only been given information from 2018, which was last year. So, I mean, I understand your position. We're not going to provide anything else. I understand that. We're here. We've been here twice. This is it. I get that. My question was, and I think I'm just going to finish up my thought, because what he did state that these things are generated automatically after 2 years, that forfeiture notices go out after 2 years of delinquent taxes. And the question I was getting to is because with respect to the answer that he provided to Ms. McDonald from, I think it was a supplemental set of questions that she provided, and she stated here, number 5, and I know these are documents that you provided for us too. She stated, number 5, can you tell me why the day before you sent answers to my questions and nearly $24,000 in debt on the following properties you are tied to were paid? If you have no involvement in the company of these properties, why did this happen? And Mr. Sabri's response, and I'm looking at the document that you provided for us, is that Mr. Sabri decided long before I asked these questions to pay the full balance of the delinquent taxes. So what I'm asking for is for $24,000 outstanding taxes, I would assume that's at least 2 years of delinquent taxes, so there should have been some forfeiture notices sent out, some bags placed on these properties, as was mentioned, and we have received none of that.
May I respond?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, the first point I would like to address would be this. When Mr. Williams sent me a list requesting somewhere in the area, I'm going to say roughly 30 separate categories of documents and information, I did not set the due date for when that information had to be provided to you. I wrote back to him promptly and I said, look, there's a lot of information. When do you want it by? It is my memory that he told me he wanted it by May the 8th, and I complied with that request. Now, if board members did not have an opportunity to review it all in time before the May 15th meeting, I regret that. I almost wish that Mr. Williams had set an earlier response date. But we believe that we have participated in this proceeding, and at some point in time, we've had to make a determination that our participation ends, and it ends here today.
All right. Is there any further questions from any board members? Ms. Hammoud.
Yeah, just follow-up question on the, like, what role in the office, like, would authorize then payment for, like, somebody who's related to you or to the deputy? You mentioned, like, you have different process because of potential conflict of interest, so can you just elaborate on that?
There are at least 20 people in the office that could do that.
Okay.
Yeah. At least 20 people could do that.
Okay. In your opinion, I mean, are you familiar with the payment plan that those companies were were afforded? And in your opinion, like, do you think that your wife was able to negotiate something that's similar to the same terms afforded to like the public? Like, just your opinion of, like, I guess, the payment plan, and based on your experience, if, you know, and your awareness.
From looking at the records that we submitted to the board, and from the questions, answering the questions to the Detroit News, and all of that, the research that I did, I didn't see anything that would indicate that my wife had any advantage over anybody else that was in the payment plan.
And when it comes back to the other item now, like the one where you stated that your son, as the attorney for, I think, Mr. Sanders. Thank you. I mean, the one item I know, like you mentioned, that he's not right now, or he is aware right now not to be, or transact similar transaction right now. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Is there any further questions? Okay.
I
Yes,
do
Mr.
have
Williams.
a couple.
Yes, Mr. Williams.
First off, Mr. Sabri, just going back and following up on Ms. Hammoud's question, I am just a little confused as to how the deed was issued to Mr. Sanders if the bid was originally done in in Adam Sabri's name. So how was the deed ultimately issued to Mr. Sanders if the bidding party was Mr. Sabri?
Because ever since I've been in the treasurer's office, I can't speak for before I got there, but ever since I've been there, there's a provision in the auction that is called a deed wizard, is what it's called. And when you when you're bidding for people, and I indicated there are a number of people who are bidding on behalf of other individuals, that they fill out what they call the deed wizard. And the deed wizard is you put the name of the person or entity where the deed will be issued at the end of at that time. That's how it happens, sir.
Okay, so the bidder completes the name of the person that should receive the deed at the end of the process if they win the bid?
Actually, it happens when you get ready to pay for the auction. You go in and put down who it is that's going to get the property that's going to be deeded to. Yeah.
Now, if the bidder has done an affidavit to become a bidder, actually participating bidder, and you're checking the affidavit to see if the winning bidder doesn't have any existing tax delinquencies or blight tickets, is that checked against the affidavit or the affiant, or is it checked against the person to receive the property in the deed wizard?
It's checked against the affidavit with the person that's reading the deed wizard, because the intent of the legislation is to prevent individuals who have blight tickets and back taxes from purchasing properties in the auction.
Do you know if Mr. Sanders had any historical blight tickets or tax delinquencies in the process before he was issued a deed for that particular property?
I don't know if he did or not, but I know that he would not have received a deed had he had blight tickets or back taxes.
And sitting here today, you don't know how many payment plans, just to shift gears, were issued to U.S. Development Services Company or Woodward Property Group by the Treasurer's Office from at any point in time, other than the copies that were attached as Exhibit 3S, I believe, to what you produced to the Ethics Board?
No, I do not.
I don't have anything else, Mr. Pinkins.
Okay, thank you, sir. Just one quick question about that bid and the deed, because I think Mr. Williams raised a couple points that I was curious about. So is it correct in that the deed, so the bidder who wins the bid is actually owner of the property, is that correct?
That's incorrect.
Okay. So the winning bidder is not the owner of the property,
That's the winning bidder is not the owner of the property.
Okay. So the winning bidder instructs, if the winning bidder tells the treasurer's office who to put the name of the deed in.
That's correct.
Okay. And if the winning bidder does not tell the treasurer who to put the name of the deed in, then what happens?
Well, the policy of the treasurer's office is after numerous attempts to contact the bidder about the deed, the treasurer's office will put the deed into the name of the registered bidder.
So then the winning bidder will become the owner.
Or the treasurer's office will cancel the sale. We have a choice. We can do one or the other.
I'm just looking at some of your documents from online. It does say the failure to provide registration information to the deed registration information to the treasurer shall result in the property being deemed in the name of the bidder. And I'm just looking at some further documentation. It just says the bidder is responsible for all taxes on the property, which is included to education taxes and goes through a litany of all the taxes that the bidder is. But again, you're saying that the bidder is not responsible, is not the owner of the property. They're responsible for all the taxes and anything else that is sort of connected to the property, local city taxes, what have you. The winning bidder is responsible for that.
Yeah, I think that we're losing sight of the whole what happened with Adam Sabri and Cortez Sanders. I think, you got a young black man that's trying to buy some property in Detroit. He doesn't have a credit. He can't get in. He calls his attorney to help him register for the auction.
The attorney that's the son of the treasurer.
He calls his attorney to help him register. He puts his credit card in, registers him, so that this young man can bid and buy a property. And that's what happened. We're losing sight of that. But that's just what happened. And I'm just telling you, that's what happened.
His attorney, who's the son of the treasurer, who's also running the auction. I mean, your son didn't. Well, obviously, you wouldn't know what as you said.
I didn't know he was doing it. I would have stopped him if I knew.
And would you say that your son, if someone were to contact your son, who's a registered bidder of the treasurer's office, registered bidder of the auction, that's the same auction is being run by basically his father, would be on the same footing as anyone else in the general public bidding at this auction?
He would absolutely be on the same footing as anyone else in the auction.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. I'm not sure if we have any further questions here today from Mr. Sabri.
I do have a question, but
Sure,
it's
Mr. Thomas.
Mr. Thomas. A lot has been made about Adam Sabri as an attorney being a registered bidder and not saying anything to his father about it. Would that be covered by attorney-client privilege?
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
Now, Mr. Sabri also testified that he doesn't ask his son about any of his legal business or his clients. Would that be a violation of the attorney-client privilege for his son to discuss his client's business with someone else?
Absolutely. And the fact that it is going from father to son, it wouldn't matter. You're dealing with two lawyers. A question was asked of him earlier whether he would ever ask Adam about it. He knows better than to ask Adam about client matters. Definitely, Judge, you've hit the nail on the head. Adam would not even have been able to ethically reveal that. I guess if he was put on notice that he couldn't do it, maybe he would have thrown up his hands and said, I'm not going to participate. But that conversation never took place.
Okay. The other question I have is the issue of the 4 properties on Wyoming and the foreclosure or the notice of forfeiture. I believe those are the properties that Mr. Pinkins was inquiring about.
Those were purchased in 2008, Judge, and there were 8 of them. There were actually 8 of those properties on Wyoming.
Six on Wyoming.
Pardon me?
6 on Wyoming. 2 others.
Two
others. 6 on Wyoming.
6 on Wyoming and
2 others.
2 others. I just want to get it straight because we're talking about 8 properties, but with that attempted clarification on my part, what was your question, sir?
Well, actually, the bottom line of my question is bid for assets. What properties are involved with bid for assets? And is that one of Mrs. Sabri's companies?
Those were the 3 Harper Woods properties, Judge.
Okay, so
They were
those were not the
purchased in
Wyoming.
211. No, not the 6 lots on Wyoming and not the other 2 lots.
Okay. Who's the owner of the Wyoming properties?
The answer is question.
Yes, Judge Thomas, the owner of the Wyoming properties is Adria Sabri, my wife.
Okay. There are some companies, though, U.S. Development Services, Woodward Property Group.
They bought 2, I think.
Are either of those listed as owners of those properties? Or
No,
are they just in the name of Badria Sabri?
They're all in her name, but here's what happens. When she made some payments on the taxes, the receipts sometimes would be put in the company name, and she would pay some of Wyoming properties which are in her name alone, and she would pay on the Harper Woods properties which are in the company name. So the receipt we put in the company name, she's had one receipt. So a lot of times the receipts will be in her name. If you look at the receipts, sometimes receipts are in her name, sometimes receipts are in the company name, but the receipt would include all the properties that she was involved with.
Okay, and those properties were purchased when?
2008, the ones in Wyoming, 2008, and the ones in Harper Woods purchased 2011.
And that was before you became the treasurer?
Yes.
That was before you became affiliated with the treasurer's office as a deputy?
In 2011, March is when I came to the treasurer's office, and she purchased the Harper Woods properties in October 2011. But the other properties in Wyoming were purchased in 2008 before I became part of the treasurer's office.
Okay, and prior to the implementation of the ethics ordinance?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
But just for the record, our request number 6 to Mr. Sabri, request number S to Mr. Sabri called for all of the payment plans between these companies and his family members. It didn't include a time frame. I think the chair's question was really triggered by Ms. Buciero's question as to whether we had all of the payment plans, because the payment plans could arise after the adoption of the ordinance, and what was happening with the payment of taxes for these properties even after the adoption of the ordinance was part of what was questioned in the newspaper, and whether they were compliant with these payment plans or entering into payment plans that might be somewhat different than the general public. And I don't think we got all of the payment plans necessarily. That seems to be the upshot of what I think Mr. Pinkins was raising.
Thank you
I
for that
find that
clarification,
curious
Mr. Williams.
because I never heard from Mr. Williams telling me there was any deficiency regarding the 2,000-plus pages of documents that I provided to him. But at any rate, I don't want to argue the point, Mr. Pinkins, with all due respect.
Sure.
We're ready to move beyond that. We're here today, and I've stated my position regarding further appearances or further documentation being provided. So,
May I?
Yes, Ms. Buciero.
I don't know. I honestly don't know that any further documentation would prove the relevant material point, which is that whether or not Mr. Sabri had knowledge or involvement in the establishment of the payment plans. And he's testified that he didn't have knowledge or involvement. So I'm not sure that any further documentation would really be necessary in making a determination.
And I'm just going to just add, and thank you, Mr. Williams, for that clarification, because that is what triggered it, because my concern is what your client stated, that these documents are triggered after 2 years of delinquent taxes, that a forfeiture notice is generated, and he has no hand in that, is computer generated, which would make one think that if these properties are owned by his family members or companies that are owned by his family members, they also, like everyone else in the general public, should have gotten a forfeiture notice telling them that these taxes are delinquent, and you're either going to come in and pay them, set up a payment plan, or we're going to move for foreclosure. The packets could have gone on. I understand some of these properties were lots, and they probably couldn't put a packet on a lot, but the houses that were mentioned, if they were forfeiture notice, and again, these were a substantial amount of taxes being owed. I believe I was somewhere and I heard Mr. Sabri stating that people are losing their homes for as low as $2,000 going back about 2 years. So for my understanding, all total of what I read, it was some $58,000 in taxes. I just read some $24,000 that was paid in a matter of, that was November 18, 2018, November of 2018, that those letters, those questions from Ms. McDonald were sent out, and within days of that, they were paid. So my concern is whether or not the general public were being treated the same way as your family members, because if these things were being generated, and as your client testified, I had no knowledge of it, it's just generated, it's computer generated, these things go out to the contractors after 2 years, how was all these taxes being able to amass thousands and thousands of dollars worth of taxes? Obviously, forfeiture notices should have gone out, and we should have been provided with those forfeiture notices. Mr. Williams' request to you was quite extensive to say, well, I didn't get a specific follow-up request for that. then I'm not going to provide it, or we're not going to go any further. I get your position. We appreciate you being here. But from my own concern, that would have just put me on some sort of notice that the general public was being treated the same way his family members were being treated. That's all.
Well, I'm not going to argue the point with you. I've stated my position twice. Ready to move on.
I'd like to add something. Okay.
What is that?
I just wanted to clarify something about the vacant lots. That we do place notices on vacant lots with stakes. A wooden stake, and the yellow bag is stapled to the wooden stake.
Again, those are copies and things that should have been provided for us. That would have,
That's your
again,
opinion
been
on-
helpful.
Mr. Pinkins, I'm not going to argue with you on
I'm not arguing with you as well. I mean, we're both attorneys. I mean, I think that would just be futile to sit here and argue at this point. But again, like I mentioned, it just would have helped me
You're
with the
arguing.
understanding.
You told me you weren't going to argue. You're arguing.
Move forward. Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for being here. Do you have any further witnesses?
I do.
to
No,
present?
I don't. I wasn't able to get my witnesses back. I was told that the May 15th hearing was going to be devoted, and I was told on April 3rd when I was here that it was going to be devoted to the entire day. I had witnesses here on May the 15th who could not appear here today. Fortunately, there was a motion that allowed me to put on Marty Spalding, who's from over on the northwest side of the state. I don't have any witnesses because I couldn't produce them. They wouldn't come again. So with that, I have an argument that I would like to present to the board, and I would say this: while I have declined to provide any further documentation, if there are going to be any further public hearings on this matter, I would want notice of that so that my client and I could be present.
And you will.
So, okay. With that, may I make my argument?
Sure.
Okay.
There's no objections?
Can we take a break first?
Sure. Let's take a break. We'll take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Let's take 10 minutes.
Sure. Okay. I don't have time for that.
He's not allowed to be there. I'm gonna run out. Considering that the one seater is probably full. We 11:17 is the stop time. Yeah, I can make it stay. Right now it's just go back there.
What did he know and when did he know it?
We're three. We didn't. Should I get out?
We're not discussing anything of substance. We could be referring to the Mueller investigation.
Okay. Okay, okay, so I got finished with business too? Oh, cool, okay. Great, all right, thank you so much. I hardly ever do messages. I don't understand. Okay, it should be.
Man, the guy in the chicken suit out there. Holy Toledo.
It's my relative. What are you getting down?
That's your cousin.
Holy. I think they just called security, huh?
Sometimes.
Yes.
Procedure here. I got.
My name is Phil Thomas. You're very welcome, ma'am.
If you don't keep him away from me, I'm gonna knock his ass out.
No,
Tell him right now.
don't.
Tell him right now.
Just don't do it. Don't go there. Don't make a mistake. Come on over here and sit on this side of me. Switch seats. Switch seats. Switch seats. Let me have my brief.
When we finish, I'm just gonna get right to those guys.
Yeah, me and you.
We're gonna stay public comments.
Well, let's wait. Yeah, let's wait. Listen, don't let it get him
I know, skin though. I know.
That's the worst thing you can
Because I know we have a couple people that are gonna talk. I think so, yeah.
Listen, just cool it down. You and I are going to get out of here today, and it's going to be over with you having to testify and give documents.
That's right. Feel like I could go to the Senate hearings in Washington now, testify after all of this.
Yeah, nominate you for a seat on the U.S. Supreme Court. Let them do what they did to Kavanaugh.
Go testify with House committees. Because these people,
Are we doing okay? Very good job.
See, they really going way beyond.
Oh, man, yeah.
Yeah, I was with Holden Commission for a couple of years, and then moved over to policy side for about 3 years.
I mean, when is it going to end? Am I taking you home afterwards, or?
Yeah, you take it.
Okay, good.
We talk on the way.
Yeah. You got time to stop? We can stop someplace for a burger, or you just eat special food?
Oh, we stop somewhere.
Sure? No, just let me talk.
Yeah, I have it all, I have it all electronically, so I've got it all. Everyone else could, all they would need is a flash drive, a flash drive over here, and I can copy anyone ever
If anybody wants a flash drive,
Appreciate the offer. We're finished for today. We're done for today. I'm going to make my argument.
Actually, it's not even an issue. It's not even an issue. He's not going to do it.
Yeah, it goes on and on and on. And these people in the back that are making that racket, I can't even concentrate. It's terrible.
In terms of the accusation that Mr. Sabri had something to do with it.
I mean, it's just, I was just hoping that they would kind of establish a timeline. I would have been able to ask him whether he knew about it or not. That's the material point. There's no witnesses who have come forward to say they're otherwise.
And he's already said he didn't know. There's
They
nothing
didn't
to
even give
contradict.
tab numbers in the hard copies.
As far as I can see.
How are you supposed to know what's in there? Yeah. Could you imagine?
What it is that because they didn't do your work. All the work that we did.
That's what I think.
Plus, I think that the people came.
You should, yeah. We're not going to be intimidated by a guy. Look at, this is one thing I can tell you. Me and you ain't the kind of guys to be intimidated by somebody in the chicken soup. He's just obnoxious, is what he is.
Black guy doing that. I guarantee you. Should.
Okay, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and go back on the record, calling this meeting back into session. This is June 19th, 2019, meeting of the Wayne County Wayne County Ethics Board. We're going back onto the record. At this time, we were getting ready to have Mr. Thomas give his final closing here, but at this point, Mr. Thomas, I'm going to ask that you hold your closing. We have to move this meeting on. A few members have other obligations, so what we're going to have to do is put this on for our next meeting, and we will give you opportunity to make that statement at that meeting. What's the next date that we have available in July? I believe it's third Wednesday of the month. Right now, we're looking at July 17th.
Through the chair, Joe Slazak with commission staff. The 17th, this room is booked because we have three commission committee meetings that day. The 10th, which is the second Wednesday, and the 24th, which is the fourth Wednesday, are both available. And the 17th and the 31st are both booked with committee meetings.
I have the 24th on my schedule. Does the 24th work for all members? 24.
Yeah, Wednesday, the 24th, 9 a.m.
24th is fine.
I can actually, board members, I can actually do the 24th at 9 a.m., but I tell you, what I had on my calendar is I think that this must be decided prior to then because of the 120-day rule.
So, Slezak, where are we within this? Within that time?
According to my calendar, the 24th is past it. What was the date?
I think it was 100.
I think the 15th, according to our calendar, but
You have to push up to the 10th, July 10th, if that works.
Yeah, the original complaint was received on February 15th, 2019 by the commission staff.
So was it 100, and how many days? What is it?
120.
Okay, so July 10th, I would say. Would that work for all members?
I'll have to move mine around, but to be here on the 10th, I can do that.
Okay.
9 a.m.?
9 a.m., sir.
July 10,
July 10th.
I'm out of town, so I'm not going to
Okay.
be able to attend.
Okay. Let's see.
Mr. Williams, is that for the decision or is that for the hearing? I think that's for the decision.
That's the decision, yes.
I assume you're going to render your decision that day,
Yes.
July 10th.
Okay. All right, so all members all fine with that? I think we're all set. We have that note in our calendars. All right, so we're going to move on to our next order of business this time. Item D on our agenda, excuse
What we
me.
need to do is, we need to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there,
We need to pass this for the day.
do we have to?
Okay, never mind.
That's what we're all set. Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to our next order of business, which is item D on our agenda, such other matters as may properly be submitted before the board.
Actually, new.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, new business, we're at item D, new business. Is there any new business at this time?
Water.
None. Nope.
Yeah, all right, so moving on to the next item of business, it's item number E, letter E, such other matters as may properly be submitted before this board. If there are any other matters, Mr. Slizak.
Just to provide an update to the board, I mean, we left it off, that Mr. Williams' contract has, excuse me here. We're conducting the meeting right now. Need to leave.
Yes, okay, sir, we understand that you're with the media, but we do want to conduct this business fairly with everyone. Okay, well, he's gone, all right. I'm going to apologize for that, too. Apologize for that. Whether or not you're for or against someone or not, this gentleman has a right to be here. We're conducting hearings. He has a right to his respect and decency. He should not be harassed by anyone. My understanding is this gentleman is allowed to be here because he is with the media. So he is allowed to be here, but he's not allowed to be disruptive. And so I'm going to apologize to Mr. Thomas and his client if they have been harassed or intimidated or treated unfairly by that outburst. And hopefully we won't have any further outbursts like that. So moving on, the other such matters as properly submitted before this board, Mr. Slezak, I believe I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, I gave you an update at the last meeting that Mr. Williams' contract was approved by the Committee on Government Operations. Well, it went to the full board, full commission on May 16th. It was approved by a vote of 13-0 with 2 absent, 2 excused. So the contract now is extended through July 23rd of 2021, and there's $65,000 on the contract. So.
Okay. All right, thank you. Does that work for you, Mr. Williams? Is that enough? Is that adequate?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I do add, for the chair, through the chair, I just want to add, at the last meeting, and I would be remiss not to mention this, I did mention that I did have some discussions with the chair of the Wayne County Commission with respect to our investigatory nature. I did sort of misspeak on some of the things that we talked about with respect to our budget, with respect to investigations. I did mention that she had stated to me that they would find the money to provide for a budget. That was incorrect. My understanding from her is that they're going to look at the surrounding counties to see how they fund their boards with respect to their investigatory process. My understanding, looking at Macomb and Oakland, they are also investigatory bodies. So what she was telling me is that they're going to look to see what their budgets are and hopefully try and mimic that if they can. So I just want to make that clarification. All right, so we're going to move on. If there's no other matters new before this board, we're going to move on to item number F, which is any other public comments.
Yeah,
I believe we have some written public comments, one received from Ponce D. Clay and State Representative Tanisha Yancey.
Through the chair, in addition, we also received, after the agenda was produced, written comments from Miranda Morrow Bartel and Ron Bartel. And we have cards from 2 people who would like to speak today.
Okay, with respect to the public comments that are written, if those participants are not here to read those statements, we're not going to read them into record on their behalf. The people who are here to have comments that they would like to make, we're going to ask them to come forward.
The first card is Ms. Katrina Muhammad.
morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I am a native Detroiter. I said that before I attended the first hearing. So I'm just going to make this very brief because I know I'm timed on my comment. I think what really bothered me today about this hearing is the decorum of the hearing. I have never ever seen a civil servant address serious allegations such as these with what is called an ethics board for the city of Detroit and be treated in such a disgusting manner by the gallery. There should be.
Let me interrupt you. I'm
some
sorry. That's
rules.
the ethics board for Wayne County, with the Wayne County Ethics
Okay,
Board.
thank you
Just
for
clarification.
correcting me. There should be some rules with regards to the public participating in this hearing. I think the most intelligent questions I heard today came from our judge over here that's sitting on the ethics board that really got to the heart of the matter. Were there any improprieties, which there aren't, and all the evidence points to that? And was there any favoritism, which there wasn't, and all the evidence points to that? But really, I would like to suggest that moving forward, the board considers applying some rules to the media so that they are not harassing or bombarding or disrespecting or acting unfairly in any way to anyone that has to report to you. That is ridiculous. It was so bad, I started to film it. And I believe Mr. Sabri had to move his seat because he was being bombarded right here in this room. And then you have a sign that says unauthorized visitors, no one beyond this point. But everybody was going up to the table. Why are they doing that? He's sitting with his attorney. They're trying to have private conversation when they lean over and talk to each other. Well, it's not private if people have their cell phones and whatever else literally right next to him and his attorney. I just think it was a serious level of disrespect and unfairness, and it was not a good look for Detroit or Wayne County. That is not how we should be conducting these type of hearings. It almost started to look like the kangaroo court. And then someone's coming in here with a costume. I mean, just out of respect for all of you, because you have a serious job. We should be dressed accordingly, respectfully. We're conducting business here. This is a serious situation. This is not a circus. So even that shouldn't be allowed. That was disrespectful, not just to Mr. Sabri, but it was disrespectful to me as a resident. It was disrespectful to all of you who are esteemed members of this board, who've taken your time out to do a very serious job today. So if there aren't any rules in place for the public or the media with regards to how they should be dressed, how they should conduct themselves as professional journalists, which I am, so that's embarrassing. That's why the media gets a bad name, because of stuff like that. Well, then if there aren't any rules in place, we need to create those rules, because that was outrageous. And I saw it the first time too. And I thought, okay, maybe by the second hearing, something will be done about that. So I'm sitting here, he's having outburst after outburst. I'm just giving you a bird's eye view of what I saw. You, respectfully, Mr. Chairman, kept apologizing, kept giving warnings.
Excuse me, ma'am. I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up. I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up. Thank you so much for your concern. Thank you. Next, the next person coming up.
The next card is Joy Canty. Ms. Joy Canty.
Ms. Canty, thank you for being here, ma'am.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity. It's going to be brief. First, thank you, Mr. Sabri, for all you have done and doing for the city of Detroit. There are children that slept with the roof over their head last night, the night before, and last year because of you saving their home through your programs, and I am here to personally thank you. Avery Williams, Karan Pinkins, I am willing to go so far as to say there's at least one person in your circle of family and friends, or a family or friend of them, who benefited from programs he put into place. This is a travesty. Mr. Williams, Mr. Pinkins, I'm curious to see if you have a cousin or two involved in the auction. I guarantee you all of you sitting here right now, if we dig, we can find at least 3 of you that have someone involved in the auction. Everybody is involved in the auction, so I am almost positive, both of you and the rest of you, Ms. Hammond, Mr. Thomas, Ms. Buciero, Mr. Young have a cousin, niece, nephew, family, friend involved in the auction somewhere down the line that you have no knowledge of. I am mortified that we are spending taxpayers' money that is so desperately needed to tear down whole neighborhoods in this great city. I have sat through these hearings and can't stomach what I am witnessing. I have yet to see the accuser, Mr. Evans, thought it enough to come at least one time. Shame on you. Quite frankly, all of you should take a page out of Mr. Sabri on his book on how to care for us, the public, literally working in our behalf and truly earning the pay he's getting from us who pays his check. It's obvious this is under the direction of someone who has underlying motive. To put it honest, public servant under such scrutiny is shameful. No wonder the public has lost faith in politics. And to you, Mr. Sabri, you hold your head up high and remember a child slept in a place called home, was able to get up and get ready to go to school because of you and God. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm not sure if either Mr. Williams or I want to address anything. I know that our names were mentioned, but we'll move on. All right, thank you so much. Most of my family's in Alabama and in New York and Massachusetts. But all right, but okay, so we're going to move on to the next person here.
Next card is Ms. Valerie Burris.
Good morning. I'm one of those individuals who've been fighting for a very long time to save my home. I continue to see my neighborhood empty out. I get those notices that the chairperson was talking about. Even in a payment plan, you still will get that notice on that yellow notice on your door, even though you are in a payment plan. That has been my experience. I get notice from the treasurer's office quite a bit, although I'm still in a payment plan. I still get those notices. So it's very important that the public know if the relatives of our treasurer got those notices. We need to know that his family is being treated like the rest of us. I lived in a once stable neighborhood, and we can cross this whole city and see what has happened due to illegal tax foreclosure. And so we want our treasurer to be above board. We need this information. This is an ethics board. This is not a witch hunt. We're trying to get the facts. And whether I appreciate Mr. Sabri, I do appreciate the fact that the city and the county has finally taken the recommendations from the public to improve the payment situation to stop tax foreclosure. But this is very important. If I, as a private citizen, if I had been able to bring forth this complaint, I would have. I don't know if I could have. So I don't have a problem that Mr. Evans hasn't been here or whatever. These are all elected officials. He's the chief executive of Wayne County. And so we do need our county government to work for us. I don't know if Mr. Sabri knew or didn't know, but I've been married 30 years and I discuss everything with my husband. So you just need to know that. So it's nothing personal for me against Mr. Sabri. It's for the favor of the people of Wayne County, the homeowners of Wayne County who continue to lose their homes. And we shouldn't have our elected, selected, or appointed benefiting from that. Thank you.
And thank you for those words, ma'am. We're going to move on to the next person. If there's any other.
Yeah, one more card from Ms. Beverly Kendall Walker.
Yes, Ms. Kendall Walker, thank you for being here, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Beverly Kendall Walker, and once again, I stand before you appreciating the job that's before you. I've been before you as a challenge to some things that the treasurer did before he became treasurer, while he was running for treasurer, that I felt was not ethical, but you all determined that it wasn't. It wasn't abuse of taxpayer dollars. I'm here today because by the admission of the current treasurer, he has admitted to things that he's done and allowed to happen under his watch. Now, the News and the Free Press and Metro Times documented it well as Charlie Liddell. So if we have any stake in what the press tells us, and we acting on what they have uncovered, it's incumbent upon you to do your job. Now, you may not be getting paid for it. I don't know what your angles are in terms of being appointed by the various elected officials, but I do believe you are honorable people, and the information that you've been supplied with, you should come with a reasonable conclusion that the public trust minimally has been violated. Number two, ethic violations have been violated. If not for the policy of Wayne County Treasurer's Office, the ethics committee that you are part of, ask county employees if there's any conflict of interest. This is done yearly. Adam Shabri is a county employee. His dad is a county employee. You're asked that question. You sign off on it to say, I have no conflict with Wayne County. There's no personal gain for me with Wayne County. I tell you, if you seriously look at the stuff that you have before you, by the Treasurer Shabri's own testimony, just listen carefully, he's violated. So if you come to the conclusion that he has not, it'll be up to the voters next year, 2020, to decide whether or not the public trust has been violated and they can continue to support Mr. Sabri. I take granted, he has done some good things, but this that he has admitted to is a glaring problem that I don't know how you can overlook it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for those words. Are there any other comments at this time? All right. At this time, we're going to move on to the next item of our agenda, which is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
On my broke cousins, I'm like, really? They got it. They all.
They've been watching HGTV. You need to talk to them.
I do. Whoa. Oh, come on, who you here supporting? Sabrina?
Tell the registrar I said, yeah.
I appreciate it.
Okay, all right, good seeing you, Dollar. You still over there at 6 Mile?
Where am I gonna go? It's
Okay,
McNichols
so
Road.
they
The
got
taxes
what?
say it's McNichols Road, not 6 Mile.
You renting out your property for the golf tournament? Like a privacy thing? Really?
26 years.
Really? They put up a thing?
And my
Wow.
neighbors were always